A discovery has been made by a recent study, saying that all bosses in Elden Ring share a similar trait. They all have ophidiophobia, the extreme overwhelming fear of snakes. And who can blame them really? Everybody's afraid of snakes, even those that pretend like they're all that. Except for King Cobra himself. King Cobra was born in the jungle and raised in the swamps, between everything that is vile, putrid, and snakes, a lot of snakes. One might say he has become one with the snake. As a result, King Cobra's body is filled with approximately 8.2 billion toxins, granting him immunity to poison, yes. But what is even more scary is that he has perfected the usage of snakes and his secret snake weapon to such a degree that he can trivialize any enemy pretty much instantly, making him the only individual in the entire history of Elden Ring that managed to conquer the Elden Throne with this very unique combination of weapons. And let me tell you, King Cobra utilizes perhaps the two of the most underrated weapons of all time in conjunction. And when you multiply underrated with underrated, what do you exactly get? Now, before we get into all the juicy details, for this build you first need to go to Limgrave, right here on the map, and make sure to loot the Box of Awesome, which is delivered by Bespoke Post, a monthly membership club delivering top shelf goods from under the radar brands. Thanks to Bespoke Post for sponsoring today's video. Every month, members get introduced to cool new products like outdoor gear, barware, home and kitchen goods, clothing, everything, even live oysters, guys. Based on a preference quiz that they fill out, 90% of their products come from small brands as well, many of which are based in the USA. Every Box of Awesome has around $70 worth of goods inside, but costs you only a fraction of the value. You can even preview your box that is assigned to you before it's shipped to decide if you like to keep it, swap it, or skip the month entirely for no charge. You only pay for what you want. I like the Weakener box a lot, which is essentially this carry-all bag. The bag looks really stylish and is made out of quality components. When you're on the move, this juggernaut will take care of you and all your stuff. Another favorite is the Terra box, which comes with a field knife, a detox scrub, and Audubon bird call. The field knife is a multi-purpose gardening tool and has got you covered whether you're walking or wandering. It gets better. I can give you 20% off with the link in the description, or enter my personal code displayed on screen at the checkout to get your first Box of Awesome. Okay, so let's go into the details, into how my King Cobra build works. See, there is a shield in the game, named the Coil Shield. This is a shield that actually comes with a live and well snake on it, and it's King Cobra's favorite snake, Sir Chester Roger William Benedict Cucumberbatch, Duke of Williamshire V, the one and only. Now, how it actually works is that the shield's Ash of War and the snake will bite your enemies. The damage is kinda decent actually, especially because we just only meet the requirements to wield the shield. But what is actually the main selling point here is that it's a semi-ranged ability that can proc poison really fast. It will only take like 2 snake bites usually versus a lot of bosses in the game to apply the poison, and we can really abuse this mechanic and benefit from it. The Coil Shield, however, is a perfect setup tool and thus will act as a setup for the main weapon of this build. And I see a bunch of question marks above your head popping up. What is the main weapon? Now, there are a bunch of snake related weapons in the game, usually indicated by having something referring to serpent in the name or just having it in the look. So for the team, we are definitely going to not use one of those, because they pale in comparison to what we're actually going to use. The forbidden snake weapon, the Glintstone Kris. And you might ask, what does this random weapon have to do with snakes? Well, take a deep look at the weapon. Deeper. What do you see? Yes, it's a snake. Only on this channel are these kind of discoveries made. Only on this channel, guys. The video of the builds. And this weapon might seem small compared to some of the other options, but this thing absolutely dunks on those options. Trust me, this thing will today prove to you that size in fact does not matter. Okay, so anyways, it's important to know our setup to understand how this build truly works. So we use the 3 Spellblade pieces, except for the headpiece for this build. For the headpiece we use the Mushroom Crown. For talismans we use the Kindred Rod of Exaltation, Magic Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander, and Godfrey Icon. And then for the flask, the only mandatory crystal tier is the Magic Shrouding Crack tier for this build. Now, every single component that I just mentioned of the setup synergizes with each other and directly buffs our damage output. The synergy is off the charts. To illustrate this, let me show you King Cobra's combat strategy on someone that nobody truly likes. So how it works is you want to start off every battle with the Coil Shield. Bite your enemies with your snake till it procs poison. From my experience, it will go really fast on a lot of bosses. Doing this in return will proc both our Mushroom Crown as well as our Kindred Rod of Exaltation bonuses, which stack multiplicatively. So right off the bat, we already have a 32% increase to our damage output. This is also visually indicated with the green shiny effect, telling you did a great job. But that is not all, because the shield applies deadly poison instead of regular poison. This is the better version of the two poison types in the game and will slowly rot our enemies' HP away while we swap over to our main weapon. The reason the Glintstone Kris is so insanely good is because it's a literal pocket nuke. First, we already have the innate bonus of the 3 Spellblade pieces that we're wearing, the Magic Scorpion Charm and the Magic Shrouding Crack tier, since our damage type is all magic damage. Shard of Alexander boosts our Ash of War then with another 15%. Then since the Glintstone Kris Ash of War has a charge component, making it deal even more damage when fully charged, we can get another 15% increase to our damage output from our Godfrey icon. Since Glintstone Kris Ash of War is magic damage, we can then also use Terra Magica for another 35% increase to our damage output. And since everything stacks multiplicatively, we get a whopping 236% increase to our damage output, from mostly just passive bonuses, with Terra Magica being the only buff spell. And what does something like that then result into? This. This kind of damage increase for a weapon like the Glintstone Kris specifically is better than you think. Yes, it gets even better when you thought that it couldn't get any better, for essentially 4 different reasons. 1, you can somewhat spam it because it comes out relatively fast even if you charge it, so stacking a lot of damage in succession means a lot of damage. And it's a ranged ability, so you can use it to kill off whatever you're fighting from a distance. And then it's also actually a 2-part Ash of War. First, you obviously have the nuclear rocket that you shoot off, but then if you chain it with a heavy or strong attack input, you get this lunging magical thrust that makes you beam into your opponent and also deals really decent damage. And then the final reason is that Glintstone Kris Ash of War Glintstone Dart is insanely efficient. It only costs 10 FP to cast it. To really prove that statement, I spent exactly 0 points on mine for this build. Yes, 0 points. That already tells you the risks that I'm willing to take for these videos. So with that information in mind, you need to give the video a like, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell. Thank you, I appreciate you. I've guilt tripped you successfully. How does that feel? Before we get into the boss fights, let's quickly talk about stats because we just mentioned one. Stats are simple for this build. Like always, I never went over level 125 and beat the game with that. And I'm not saying that to brag, it just shows that the build works very well on lower levels. Okay, I'm saying that to brag. The build works best as a pure intelligence build, so get 80 intelligence and fully soft cap on that stat to maximize the damage output. That also means that Astrologer will be the best starting class for this build, but it's a very stat efficient build, so starting class doesn't really matter that much. Then the majority of the remainder of your points, you'll want to put them in Vigor, so you have decent sustain and tankiness, and then finally put the rest of the points in these stats, so you meet the requirements to wield the weapons, but also have decent stamina. For the level 150 build, you can put some points in Dexterity, because the Glintstone Kris Ash of War, the second part of it, the Thrust, actually scales with Dexterity. But I would honestly just prioritize comfortability, so get 7 more levels in Vigor to fully soft cap on that, and then spread the rest of your points in Endurance and Mind based on your personal preference. Okay, let's go. We want to see the build in action. I know, I hear you. So let's start off with Morgoth. Using our coil shield on Morgoth makes us apply the poison with only 2 bites, and it's actually a very quirky and fun mechanic. We basically have 2 phases, where the first phase is the setup with our snakes biting our enemies and in return getting rewarded by applying deadly poison on the enemy, but also the major damage boost that we get to our damage output. Then after we've successfully finished phase 1, it is time to nuke Morgoth out of existence in phase 2. And yeah, I was definitely not lying when I said that damage output gets ridiculous. Even though our weapons are small, it ironically defeats the biggest enemies in the game quite easily. The fire giant just gets obliterated. What's fun in the second phase, however, is that you can aim at its eye thanks to the range aspect of the Glintstone Kris, and honestly that damage is really crazy for Fire Giant phase 2, and it shows yet again how good this weapon is. Now versus the Godskin duo, it gets even better. After applying the poison with our snakes, the destruction starts. Now this is some kind of different destruction because we can actually use the pierce mechanic of the glintstone Chris. Yes, that means exactly what you think it means. You can hit multiple bosses at the same time with the glintstone Chris's Ash of War, as long as they're lined up behind each other. And these two individuals aren't really the smartest individuals in the world, so they will consistently line up behind each other, and you will do this type of damage. You also see that the poison comes in very clutch right here, showing you that the poison does supplement the build very nicely in fact as well. The fight also illustrates very well that even without Terra Magica and when our poison related bonuses fall off, the damage is still really nice. In the Beast Clergyman and Malekith fight, I didn't even bother using poison because this dude is just too slow, and by the time he gets to you, you can pretty much already kill him off. But nonetheless, it's a relatively easy fight because you can just nuke them out of existence from a distance. Gideon, however, is a really fun fight, as it only takes one bite to proc poison on him, and then after that, both the initial attack as well as the follow-up charged attack with Glintstone Chris completely makes you control the flow of the fight while dishing out insane damage. And the fight is over within a few seconds really. Godfrey, Horalu, and Radagon are all a similar story to Gideon. They just get completely destroyed with the King Cobra setup, and these fights show that the core idea is very effective because they all get destroyed in the exact same manner, as you will see. Radagon is actually strongly resistant against poison, so instead of 1 or 2 bites, this time it takes 3 snake bites to apply the poison, and afterwards you will see the big numbers again. One thing I didn't mention yet is the great tracking of the nuclear missile that the Glintstone Chris shoots off, because as you see, you can even hit enemies with it that are above you. Now I would say that the Elden Beast is probably the main weakness of the build, because he's immune to poison, but really you can still dish out very good damage without the poison aspect of the build. I didn't even bother swapping out the Mushroom Crown and Kindred Rod of Exaltation, as I just kept it from the Radagon fight. But if you desperately need more damage to enemies that are immune to poison, just put the Spellblade hat on for another 2% extra damage and replace the Kindred Rod of Exaltation with something like the Ritual Swords Talisman. Ultimately, I would say that the Elden Beast fight is still very doable with just the base power of the Glintstone Chris, mostly because you can just kill off the Elden Beast safely from a distance and spam the projectile. You will also see this in other fights. Even without the poison mechanic versus say other immune enemies, you will still trivialize a lot of fights. Before the enemy has a chance to do anything against you, they're essentially already dead. It's kind of funny how easy some fights become that are usually not necessarily that easy, but in this setup allow you in all tranquility to just kill them off from a distance, like you're not even in combat. You're just relaxing, drinking a cup of tea, and killing off whatever is in front of you. But I would definitely say that the skill ceiling and damage potential correlate and can get both very high if you utilize the various aspects of the build. The playstyle becomes really fun because it is a very unique and unorthodox playstyle that the King Cobra build embraces. It is a build that I just came up with while experimenting with a team revolving around snakes, and it shows that even more than a year after Elden Ring's launch, there are still really strong new builds out there that need to be discovered. You just sometimes have to look beyond everything that is big, mighty, and draw all the attention to find some of the more obscure but really great things in life.